Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So if you don't know, my name is Kai. I'm the host of the Crochet Corner podcast here on YouTube. I also have a couple of things that I do, such as the social hour, where anything that I feel like would make the podcast run super long, we discuss there. And also our own Let's Talk series, where I do yarn reviews, different technique reviews, and just, informational stuff that I feel like I want to discuss with you guys. I go ahead and post it here. So if you have seen the last video where I go into a little bit about what I think you would need if you are a beginner sock knitter for the first time. Sorry, I'm checking the viewfinder to see if the glare is in my glasses, because it might not be annoying to other people, but it's annoying to me. But aside from that, our last Let's Talk video, which I believe was episode 15, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was 15. Last episode, I kind of went over a couple things that I thought would be really important if there are some predominant crocheters who are interested in first-time sock knitting. In this series, this Let's Talk segments are really going to be about the beginner perspective of sock knitting and what I recommend for you guys. Of course, like I said, I am a complete beginner. Like, there's beginner and then there's me in front of beginner, okay? But I really would have appreciated just some people who were in the position like me just giving their thoughts. This is in no way a review, and of course you do not have to do anything that I do, but I just want to make it easier for those people who sometimes it can be a little bit confusing for people who have knitted for such a long time and they're trying to show beginner something. It can be a little confusing at times because of course they know what they're doing, so they're speeding through things. So I'm going to take that approach and I'm going to slow it down and let you guys know everything that I have learned so far in my beginner sock knitting journey. So last episode, I just went over some very generic things. I didn't really go into too much detail about it. So this episode, I really want to talk about knitting styles. So there are different ways for you to begin your socks. There are a way where you begin it with what's called DPNs, and they just individual needles like this long, and you use about 5 or 6 of them to go ahead and make your sock, and it is possible to do so in a circular motion. I am not well versed in DPNs. I've never seen DPNs in my life, but I seen a couple tutorials when I was first starting off on people who were using DPNs to create their socks. If that is something that you are interested in, please feel free. I will leave some videos below for you to check out if you think that you want to go ahead and try DPNs. And then to the best of my ability, I will go ahead and insert some pictures of what DPNs look like if you are not too sure for yourself. But if I forget, guys, it is a quick Google search away. Literally DPN, and then a whole bunch of stuff will show up for you. My preferred method is called Magic Loop. Magic Loop can be worked either way. You can work it toe up or cuff down. We'll go into more detail about toe up and cuff down maybe later or in a later video. Right now we're going to focus on those knitting styles. So socks can be constructed either way, either knit from the toe up or from the cuff down using circular needles, DPNs, and you can also use what is called Magic Loop on circular needles. So my preferred method of knitting my socks is called Magic Loop on circular needles. So that would require you to, if you're going to knit socks 2 at a time, to at least have a 40-inch cord. You can go larger, or if you prefer to knit your socks 1 at a time, which is my preferred method as well, you can get away with using a 24 or 32-inch cord for making one sock. So I have an example. I actually have a couple examples if you watched my last podcast of what Magic Loop looks like right here. So this is what Magic Loop, let me grab the other one. One moment. Okay, so this is what Magic Loop would look like if you were to have it on one needle. And now this is, I'm so sorry, I don't know. I think it's a 24 inch, but it might be a 32. Don't quote me. But this is what Magic Loop would look like on a circular needle, specifically either a 24 or 32 inch cord. And what that means is that you take your whole amount of stitches. So for me, I casted on a total of 68 stitches, and I divided that by 2, which means I have 34 stitches on each needle. So on my front needle, I have 34 stitches, and on my back needle, I have 34 stitches. And instead of working your stitches either like in a continuous round, I am only working a certain amount of stitches each time. But when I cast off, it's going to cast off in a circle. These socks right here were knit using the magic loop method from toe up. So that means I started off with a Turkish cast on, and I did increases all the way up the sock until I bound off. And then I inserted my heel leader. But this is a sock that was actually knit using the magic loop method. And you see, it is a circle. So that is my preferred method of how I like to knit my socks. I personally think after you get past like the toe increases, it is the easiest method because for me, I'm not someone who can cast on a lot of stitches and work a lot of stitches. I definitely get burnt out. So it is really, really nice for me to have those, sorry, I just hit the mic. Let me scoot that back. To have those stitches separated. Another cool thing about Magic Loop is that it also gives you the capability of knowing your front from your back. So when you're ready to insert your heel, you won't have to do a lot of guesswork, because I know according to mine in my stitch marker in my pattern here that this is the front of my work. And this plain just stockinette is the back of my work. So I know where to insert my heel when I am ready to do so. So that's another thing I really, really love about Magic Loop. But Magic Loop is definitely not for everybody. There are some cons to doing Magic Loop. More specifically, what you can see here on the side of my sock, this right here, is called laddering. So with Magic Loop, I'm going to actually do a little bit of a show. So when you do Magic Loop, you're basically pulling one needle long and using that to work across your work. Right here is where the ladders occur, right in the middle. And that is because when you are knitting, you kind of have to pull it a little tight, pull your stitch a little tight just to avoid any gaps. But you know, laddering can happen. If you were to just knit your socks, because in a continuous round, which means just a full circle using 9-inch circular needles or even DPNs, you really wouldn't run into laddering. Well, DPNs, I'm not too sure, but for sure, if you were to knit in a continuous round without splitting your stitches, you wouldn't run into laddering because it's just you knitting in a circle like this. So that's just definitely something that you have to come to terms within yourself if that's something you're okay with, because for the first time, do I have my first pair of socks? I don't have them on me. My knitting was definitely very loose, so I had a really bad laddering on my very first pair of socks. But with that, I still really, really like Magic Loop because it allows me to, for my knitting style, I can't handle too many stitches at once at this moment. There's room for improvement. I like having them separated. And then while I'm still within my learning process, it also helps me when I'm trying to learn which method of heel I prefer. So I also wanted to go over the different ways that you can knit your socks. So like I said, you can either do 2 at a time or you can do 1 at a time. So here is an example of what 2 at a time sock knitting would look like. And once I show you, I will definitely go over with you whether I would recommend it or not. So if you want to, sorry for all the crinkling of the bag in front of the microphone. If you want to knit your socks 2 at a time, you have to have 2 separate balls of yarn. Now with 2 at a time knitting, for 50 grams, they say you need 2 50-gram balls to make an adult pair of socks. So you need 2 separate yarns. So I have mine, my 2 yarns separated in these 2 Ziploc bags. And then I have my cast on here. I have 2 socks casted on here. So 2 at a time knitting definitely helps. If you're like me who has second sock syndrome, that basically means like you're good with knitting the first sock, but the thought of knitting the second one, and it takes forever. And the next thing you know, you've had a pair of socks on your needles for like almost 3 years. But that's neither here nor there. Knitting 2 at a time will definitely eliminate that for you so that you can get 2 socks out of your one transaction. The only thing with 2 at a time knitting is that it can get tangled because the yarns will cross. Like I actually have a tangle right now. So why I have them for right now, my preferred method is these 2 bags, because what I do when I turn my yarn and I'm ready to knit down the other side of the socks, I just flip my bag over, and that helps me with yarn management. I do know they make project bags that actually have 2 slots in them so that you won't have to have them separated like that. But I would definitely not recommend 2 at a time sock knitting when you're first starting out. I have been knitting socks for almost 3 years now. One pair I finished fairly quickly. The second pair took me a while. So I really only have 2 pairs of socks under my belt, but from continuously working on them, I feel like I have a little bit of knowledge about them, and I would not recommend 2 at a time knitting for your first time. I would actually recommend you working on your socks 1 at a time so that you can get used to practicing the toe increases, or if you're working cuff down, your ribbing. You can also get used to practicing how to do your preferred method of cast on. I prefer to use the Turkish cast on, and things like that. And 1 at a time sock knitting is going to help you do that because it's repetitive, and you're going to keep having to cast on. You're going to keep having to do those increases and those decreases and things like that. So that is why I would highly recommend you do your socks for at least your first couple pairs. Do them 1 at a time, because 2 at a time knitting, the cast on process is a lot. I'm going to be 100%. I didn't think I was going to be able to make it. I have these tiny socks on my needles, and I was not too sure if I'm even ready to cast on like socks for myself 2 at a time. But everyone's different, absolutely. But I would advise for you to take it slow, because it is very easy to get frustrated when you're trying something new for the first time. And casting on when you're knitting and binding off and things like that, doing all that stuff correctly, it's not easy on the first time, guys. So don't stress yourself out. Take it 1 at a time, and by the end of maybe even a couple months, you're going to realize that, it's going to get easier and easier. I just want to let you know that it is not as daunting or as complicated as you think. It's very intimidating when you do think about it, because I started getting interested in socks because when I first stumbled upon podcasts. Now, the podcasts that I stumbled upon, they were predominantly knitting podcasts. So I was like, wow, that is so cool. That was even before I even knew you could crochet socks. So I was just very intimidated. But once I took the plunge and started doing it, guys, it's really, really easy. Especially if you're like me who just knits vanilla socks. I don't even use patterns. You don't even have to use patterns. You can just knit straight vanilla socks. The most intimidating thing I would say about knitting socks would have to be the heel. And we will definitely talk about that in another video. But for right now, guys, if you have any questions for me, like knitting, like any needles that I would recommend, I did discuss that in the last video and I left links, but I will definitely leave the same links in the description box below for you to check out. You can always email me. All my contact information is in the description box below, but our comments box are always open for discussion. And if you are an experienced knitter and if you have any suggestions for me or any of our first timers here on my channel, please leave them below so that we can share knowledge together, because I know I wish I had that support when I first started my sock journey or my knitting journey in general, and I want to be here for you guys so that for you who want to make those socks, you can do so successfully. So thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was kind of short. I hope that you got something out of it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. We are all inclusive over here. We love all types of crafts, okay? And I'm always trying to dab my foot in anything. But again, thank you so much for coming over to the Crochet Co. Stay tuned next week for another video, and I will see you in the next one.